Hey guys, this is Tauna, and today we're going to be talking about Edge of Eternities. There is a huge amount of stuff we're going to cover, so I'm going to go as quickly as possible, but it's all in advance of this panel coming tomorrow with the Edge of Eternities debut going to be showing up on YouTube and starting like the reveal season and everything. So this is a space opera / science fantasy based set that looks really cool, and I'm very excited about it. Some of the stuff that they've shown so far is just amazing. Some of the lore and stuff around it as well, it's just incredible. So the set releases on August the 1st, 2025, so that's less than a month away. And yes, I do realize Final Fantasy only just released and we're kind of going through the cycle of that, but I know that some people weren't happy with Final Fantasy because it was Universes Beyond. This gets you into something that's within the Magic multiverse. I say that, we'll get to why I say it like that in a second. So again, this is right before the panel that's going to be happening tomorrow at 2:55 my time, which means that I'll be getting up at that time to, do a video for you guys and cover this, getting ready for this amazing set, and, get that instant speed breaking news for you guys that you absolutely love. Now, I do want to ask you guys, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share the video, all that kind of stuff. 79.1% of people who watch the videos are not currently subscribed. So let's get that up. Let's get that up to at least 75% or something. So let's go through it. First of all, the setting, the plane. So this is not really a plane that this is set on. It instead is on, I'll show you a picture in a minute because it's really hard to understand. This is basically the farthest edge of the multiverse, and it borders directly onto the Blind Eternities. This is more than just a plane. In fact, this is a whole new setting for Magic to go into, right? It's still a part of the Magic multiverse. Like the Magic characters go into here, there's some crossover and stuff. However, it's not actually a part of the main multiverse, which is interesting. Now, the setting for this takes place within the Sothera system, which is a single contained solar system within the Edge, and it's going to contain this Sothera at the super void. It's a partially collapsed black hole that is right at the center of the universe, center of the solar system, that's all going to kind of revolve around. So here is a picture to kind of show you guys the setting. So this area all out here that's got all these white dots in it, this is the edge, right? The edge of where we're going to be going. One of these little dots here will be like Sothera, which is where we're actually based. And along here, you've got a thing called the Chaos Wall. And then once you kind of pass through that, if you're able to, then this part here is the Blind Eternities, and each one of these little dots is one of the planes that we've got. So, Dominaria and stuff like that, right? Like each of these is a different plane. The Blind Eternities is like the liquid that goes around all that plane and stuff. And then where we're at here in the edge, and then outside here is the Quiet Wall bordering onto the Empty Void. So we're in this part. Imagine it like like the skin of an orange kind of thing. Inside the juicy middle bit is the known multiverse from what we've had previously, and the Blind Eternities. The skin is where we're at, which is the edge. So it's a really interesting kind of concept, and there's some really interesting cool stuff from this. So this is mostly a standalone story. It's written by Seth Dickinson, who's like an actual professional author and everything. Sothera finds itself in the clash of these two faiths. There's the monoists who worship gravity and black holes and stuff. And then on the other side, there's the Solar Knights of the Sunstar Free Company. The main story follows Sammy and Tanook as they're trying to rescue their cat Miri. And the monoists want to collapse Sothera into a full black hole, while the Sunstar Free Company want to fire a massive laser into it to reignite the star, essentially. So it's like this clash of these two faiths going on, and meanwhile we're following Sammy and Tanook just trying to rescue their cat, which is really cool. And there's something potentially in the middle of Sothera as well that might escape. There's some really funky stuff in the story as well to do with time manipulation and stuff. And just read the story. It is absolutely amazing. And there's some really interesting concepts there as well, with like the multiverse kind of leaking out into the edge and influencing it. Stuff like, Miri, the cat is called Miri, which obviously, Miri within the main multiverse is this cat warrior who's a part of the Weatherlight and everything. And then meanwhile, they've named their cat Miri, which is really weird. And then you've got slivers, which are like these bedtime, nighttime horror stories, essentially, like, xenomorphs kind of things. And then you've got just a whole bunch of concepts from the main multiverse get reimagined as they go out. Like the Kavu get reimagined as this alien race called the Cav. It's really interesting and really cool. And make sure you just read that story. And notably, this set's going to feature slivers in some capacity. We don't know how the slivers are going to be in there, but they are, and you can actually see them on one of the arts from the most recent story as well. The Eldrazi do feature within that story, and the Drix are aliens from like the Forebearer kind of thing, except they're still alive, which is really interesting concept as well, because usually like a Forebearer race has been extinct for a while and stuff. They're not. The Drix are there. They're expert Eldrazi hunters. There was Fomori recently mentioned within the story as well. Actually, within the Planeswalkers guide, the Fomori were mentioned. There's at least one Lagoif as well within the story. The Cav, which is the edge term for the Kavu race, and they like humanoid stuff. The Baloths are out there. There's angels, which are called the Astali, which are made up from the remains of stars killed by the supervoids. There's alien jellyfish people. There's alien insect people. The only one who came from the main multiverse is Tezzeret, and Tezzeret kind of gets chucked into this multiverse. Well, it's essentially a new multiverse kind of thing, of like, what the hell's going on? This is all really unusual and stuff. Like, yeah, it's he knows Eldrazi, and that's really it from there. It's really cool. I really love the story, so make sure you check that out as well. So now that we've gone through like the setting, let's get into the actual cards. First of all, this set is very much featured around like lands, right? So we've got like these huge borderless basic lands of celestial stuff, which is really cool. The lands are just a big deal. We've got these, which is the bonus sheet. The EOS is the tag for it, and it's called the Stellar Sights bonus sheet. It features lands from across the multiverse reimagined in space. Also, there is galaxy foils coming back as well within the actual within the collector boosters, which is cool as hell. We've got these shock lands coming back as well, which is insane. First of all, reprinted within standard, and then you can also pick them up. They're rares, but still, like, who's not going to turn out shock lands? This set is going to be absolutely amazing. So as for the mechanics, we've got the spacecraft, which is the new mechanic here. It works kind of like crew, where you tap creatures. However, instead of tapping them to crew something, you tap them to put charge counters equal to their power onto your spaceships. And then once they get to a certain number of charge counters, which this one here, the Ceremia, needs 7+, they get extra abilities. And they're not just within within vehicles, essentially. Spacecraft can show up on a bunch of different things. The station ability here. There's also Void, which seems like a fixed version of Revolt, which is whenever a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn, you get to do something. There's cards that cost less and stuff like that if they've been warped and everything. And then finally, we've got Warp here, which is some kind of alternate casting cost. I'm not going to go into details with that because it's a leak. You can find that online somewhere if you want to look at it. There's also a rules change so that legendary vehicles and spacecraft can now be commanders. So the RMS Titanic here can show up as your commander if you really wanted it to. That is going to be as live as of Edge of Eternities pre-release. So we've also got the headliner of the set here, which is Sothera, the Super Void, the main kind of big half-collapsed multiverse. I keep saying multiverse. Half-collapsed Super Void star that's centered within this solar system. It's a really cool card. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent chooses a creature they control and exile it. And then at the beginning of your end step, if there's no creatures on the board, you sacrifice it and then put a creature card that was exiled via it onto the battlefield with 2 +1/+1s. Really interesting card. And then there's a bunch of different shows for it. So, we've got the Singularity foil here, which is really cool. The Japanese showcase here. So Japanese showcases are back as well. And then just the regular version here as well. So these are our two main protagonists here, which is Sammy. Sammy creates colorless robot artifact creature tokens if you control 2 or more tapped creatures. Really cool. Sammy, and then we've got Tanuk here, who is all about landfall. So we can kind of guess that Boros is going to be stuff to do with spacecrafts and, tapped focused around tapped creatures and stuff. And then Gruul is going to be most likely landfall and stuff. And these are apparently two versions of these characters, like one version of these characters. However, there's going to be another version of them because this is them in the past, right? Like Sammy showing up in the past here. This is Tanook while he was a part of the Navy in the actual main storyline. He's not a part of the Memorial Navy anymore. He's got kicked out of it for disobeying orders and stuff. So it's really interesting. We've also got the Ceremia, which is their ship, which I briefly mentioned before. Lets you tutor up a legendary creature, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle, and then you can station. And then once it's station 7, then it's got flying, and other tapped legendary creatures you control have indestructible, which is cool. It also becomes a creature then because it gets like a stat line there. So we've also got Tezzeret here. This is the main version of him. And then we've got the Triumphant treatment. I really hope that shows up for more cards because this is amazing. Absolutely bonkers abilities too. Whenever an artifact you control enters, put a loyalty counter onto him. You get to untap target artifact or creature, and if it's an artifact creature, put a +1/+1 onto it. You can tutor up a artifact card with mana value 1 or less, and then you can also at the beginning of combat put 3 +1s onto a target artifact you control, and then if it's not a creature, it becomes a robot artifact creature. Really interesting. We've got Temporal Inversion, which was the one that was revealed today with that Void ability. So this one here costs 2 less if you cast, 2 less to cast if a non-land permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn. And then you get to make someone discard. And then into the precons here. These precons are absolutely huge, right? They actually come with 12 new cards instead of the usual 10. And there is a new dual land, like 2 rare, 2 new rare dual lands in each of them. So there's 10 normal cards and then 2 additional dual land cards. So it's kind of like a cycle. I guess there's going to be 4 within the 2 of them. And this is the first time we've seen new dual lands. They're exclusive to the precons and potentially within the collector boosters, as well as they are most likely commander focused, right? Because of the fact that these are commander products, they can make them commander focus. So maybe like the battle bond lands here, where they've got like whenever you've got 2 or more opponents do something, maybe like a Triome that's got that. I don't know. There's some really cool stuff they could do with this. And they're going to be only within these precons and potentially collector boosters. The first precon here is the World Shaper one. So this is built around sacrificing your lands and then regrowing them. So you're sacrificing your lands, getting stuff based off of that, and then bringing them back to the battlefield via various reanimation. As opposed to the Desert Bloom one, though, I think this is going to be more focused around that actual sacrificing section rather than focused around just getting them into the graveyard in any way possible. They'll obviously have some crossover between those 2 precons, but realistically, there's going to be a few differences too. And given the fact that Gruul is landfall within Edge of Eternities, most likely, it's going to be some crossover between those 2 there too. The main commander here is the Seed ship, the Hearth Hull. Not much is known about it. However, obviously, because it is going to be a legendary spaceship that has like a mana value, a power and toughness, but down below it can be your commander. And most likely it's going to sacrifice your lands, given the fact the secondary commander here, Srazrul, Genesis Shepherd, lets you play your lands from the graveyard, and it has some kind of trigger based off of you sacrificing stuff. So, it's a Jund sacrifice, mostly sacrificing lands, but it says technically sacrifice non-token permanents. So if you sacrifice your creatures, I guess that will count there too. And then our other one here is the Counterintelligence precon, which combines the power of artifacts with proliferation and counters. Now, given the fact the new spaceships all are focused around charge counters and stuff, I really hope this is more focused around charge counters rather than +1/+1 counters. We've had +1/+1 counters on a whole bunch of different precons before. I'm really hoping that this one is more focused around charge counters or other types of counters rather than just those, basic +1/+1 counters. We've got the main commander. Again, not much is known besides this is the Interstellar Vessel in Spirit. In fact, even less is known about this because the other one had the Seed ship, which is interesting named. This is just the Interstellar Vessel. Likely it's going to add counters to things, add charge counters, whatever, helps you enable all your other spaceships and stuff. And then our secondary commander here is Kilo Apogee Mind, which, Oh, is insane. I love him. He's going to go infinite so easily and just create so much really bonkers stuff. So he has, whenever he becomes tapped, proliferate. So if you add something like Paradise Mantle that adds the fact that it can tap and add a color and then add Freed from the Real so you can untap, you just tap him constantly, tap and untap an infinite number of times and then proliferate an infinite number of times, which is just crazy. In fact, I argue that he is potentially even better than Atraxa as a proliferation commander nowadays, because he's going to just, yeah, it's easily abusable. So I'd love to hear from you guys as to what you think about the set and everything. And I look forward to my video coming at, 4 a.m. tomorrow when I'm awake. Have a great day and goodbye.